And we're live. Hello again, guys. Welcome to our broadcast. It's a great honor today to have our guest here, Raven Gregory. Actually, I'm enjoying this interview with him. I'm so glad that he accepted to be with us today. So, hello there, Raven.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
How's everything going with you, man?
I'm exhausted. I stayed up late last night partying hard with a novel by Stephen King called The Long Walk, and I read it till 3 a.m. So I am tired. I don't know if my face shows how tired I am. If you're just like amazed by the beauty of this, or if it shows
Yeah,
behind the beautiful.
it just shows that you got out of bar fight.
Yeah, exactly. That's. I like that bar fight. I have bar fight eyes this morning.
Well, first we are going to start with a couple of fun questions before we head to the official ones that our guests here, our viewers here are waiting for it. So the first one is, what is your secret origins?
My secret origin.
Yeah.
My secret origin that very few people know about is the way I became a comic book writer was I was hanging out with 3 other friends and we were drinking and smoking weed. And one of my friends was like, "Hey, we should make a comic book." And I was like, "About what?" And he said, "I don't know." And I went home and started writing comics that night. And I haven't stopped since. And that is my secret origin. I was transformed into a writer by atomic weed.
Well, this is just the most strange origins I have ever heard about since this broadcast ever started.
Some superheroes get bit by an irradiated spider and turn into Spider-Man. I smoked weed and became a writer. That's a true story. I'm not even lying.
Your weapons of choice for writing and for being an editor.
Shit. So, weapons of choice is I'm trying to think of the word discretion, I guess. I hate saying the word by the way. So one thing I noticed that I learned as an editor was when I give notes via the internet, I tend to get straight to the point. And when you're an editor, you can't really do that. One of your most valuable weapons is your relationship you build with your freelancers. Mm-hmm. And I had to step back and relearn after a few months of editing when somebody would say, "Raven, you're kind of a dick, man." And I'm like, "No, I'm not being a dick. I'm just like, here, this is what you need to fix." And I wouldn't do the thing. There's this thing editors always do. And if you ever working on a project, you'll notice good editors will always say, "Hey, you did this and this really good," or "I really like this," and "Oh man, that was awesome the way they came out. Can you fix this and this and this after it?" Because if you constantly have people just telling you what's wrong with something, you get this kind of sense that you're not good, and it messes with your self-esteem. So, yeah, my weapon of choice in editing is discretion.
Well, you use a hammer in hand to knock your freelancers, man, while you are working. Whereas, starting with the next question, which is, if you wasn't a writer or an editor, what's your secret identity? What's your hobby?
Porn star.
What?
Porn star. I would have been a porn star. I would have had an OnlyFans page. I would have been on RedTube, XTube, Xvideos, all those websites and shit. I would have been the fat guy having sex for money, and I would have been damn good at it. I'd be wearing this too. I'd be wearing nothing but this in the midst of crazy sexual positions. I would have been wearing this.
And the watch too.
Nothing else.
Wearing a necklace and the watch.
Yep.
So, are you a villain or a superhero?
Villain. Yeah, definitely villain. I like writing villains much more, and I always feel like everyone feels like they're the hero of their own story, but I'm a recovering alcoholic, so I always feel like the villain in my own story. So yeah, definitely villain. Mm-hmm. Plus, I have the hair. I have the hair of a supervillain. Heroes don't have hair like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I sing the same way because I'm a villain too myself. Whenever I play a role-playing game, I find, and I start as a good guy, I find myself in the end, I'm getting the bad end because I have chosen thousands and hundreds of bad choices while playing.
Are you on a laptop computer?
No, I'm on a PC.
Damn it! Does your camera move?
Yeah.
I want to see all these toys in the background. What is going on with these action figures? That is a dope setup. You can't see mine, but on the I'm in my bedroom. So on the back of my bed, it's like one of those beds that have that big mirror so that if I ever have sex one day again, I can see myself in the mirror having sex with the person I'm having sex with. I can see their face to see if they're getting bored, you know, or if I'm doing a good job, like, you know, but along the wall is all my I got like Hulk action figure, Dragon Ball Z's, Three Little Monkeys, a Baby Yoda, all this shit. So I was like, I wanted to see what you got cooking in the back there because that's a dope setup. I like that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I will send them to you. Send a couple of pics to you because it's hard to move the camera to the back of the end of the room, but I will send them to you.
Is this like your office?
Yeah, this is my art studio.
This is your art studio. I like your doors in the back, man. We don't have. Where are you? Where are you? What state, country, city?
I'm from Egypt.
Egypt. Okay.
Yeah.
So where are you now, though?
Now I'm broadcasting from Egypt.
You're in Egypt right now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Can I curse on this thing?
Speak freely if you want.
Oh, so wait. So nobody gets in trouble if I talk about weed and shit, right?
No, it's okay. Dude, it's fine.
So is weed legal in Egypt?
No.
Okay, so guess what? Arizona, it wasn't legal either until like 2 weeks ago. It just became legal. We were like you the whole time until 2 weeks ago. And now in March, we can smoke weed with the free and the brave. Because I guess that's the thing. But I love your Egyptian doors. That is so cool. I've never talked to somebody from Egypt. Okay, now I gotta ask the stupidest American question an American can ask somebody who he just met, who's from Egypt, who has amazing Egyptian doors. How far is it from the pyramids where you're at?
Well, it's like 100 kilos from.
Okay, so could you jog to them?
No, it's not like jogging. I could hop a train or car or rent a car to get to the capital, to Cairo.
One question that we get in Arizona all the time is, have we gone to the Grand Canyon or do you want to go to the Grand Canyon? And anybody from Arizona hates the Grand Canyon. Like, we don't give a shit. It's a big hole in the ground. You see it once, you don't really give a shit. Have you seen the pyramids? Have you been to the pyramids?
Yeah.
Is it amazing? Is it awe-inspiring and shit?
It's mysterious, and you get a strange feeling about this place. It's like you start wondering and asking yourself, how did old ones build something like this? How did they even think about like this? It's mysterious, and it really works as an origins to any comics or any novels or any movies. But sadly, to this day, I didn't watch, as an Egyptian, I didn't watch any movie or anything talking about this incident, talking about this event, this mystery, and gave it its characteristics, its purpose. So I like it always lacks the reasons to represent this event, this
Right,
masterpiece, this
right.
wonder.
You can't crawl up it. You can't walk up it, can you?
Well, I get a phobia from high places, but I can't climb it very high. But I can climb a couple of
So
meters
you
away.
can go. You can actually touch the pyramid.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
That's cool. I like that. I like that. See, because I went to New York once and I found out that you're not allowed to touch the Statue of Liberty's boob. And I'm like, well, what's the point? Why am I going to pay to get on a ferry, go all the way down there to this island? You can't look up her dress at all because the dress is like she has like one of those, bougie dresses. And then you go to the top, you can't even touch a boob. Just it's not cool. It's not cool. So sorry, I didn't mean to hijack the interview. Continue with the questions. I love these.
Well, it's okay. It's fun actually. So we already know how did you break into the industry, but we would like to know what influences have shaped your writing.
Uh, I grew up. I really gotta stop saying the word. It's the worst word in the world. I grew up on a lot of Rod Serling. The Twilight Zone was one of my favorite things growing up. I also was lucky enough, fortunate enough to get a box of comics when I was very young, about in sixth grade. So I started reading a lot of House of Mystery, uh, Tales of Horror, like a lot of old horror anthology comics. So that and Stephen King uh, played a pretty big part influencing me. That and I started reading. I started reading viciously when I was in, like, my whole life. I've been a big reader, but so come in high school, I started reading just like everything. And Peter David was writing the Hulk, and I can't tell you how much I learned just reading that guy. Him and Bendis were huge influences. His dialogue, and I just read everything. I read everything I can get my hand on. So I'm a little mosaic piece of every writer I've ever read before.
Hmm. So this really helps. And how does an idea for a story begin? What are the steps to your creative process?
Well, they have this thing. I'm pretty sure they have it in Egypt too. It's called weed. So what happens is you get this plant and you grow it from the ground. You have to give it water, and then it needs sunlight too. And then it makes this thing called a bud. Then we take that bud and we roll it up. And as we're rolling it up in a paper, it sounds weird, stick with me here, we have to introduce fire to this rolled up joint. And then, this is going to sound crazy, but you smoke it. And when the smoke, the fire goes into your lungs, all of a sudden you start coughing. And as you cough, there's a chemical reaction that occurs in your brain. And all of a sudden, ta-da, you get a story.
Oh.
No. That would be awesome. That would be awesome if that's all it took to come up with a story. You smoked some weed and you came up with a story. So stories are very, I can't think of the word right now, but every story is different. They come at the most random times from the most correlation of strange events out of nowhere. So I mean, it's really hard to pinpoint down how a story process actually happens, because each story is in of itself its own creative thing. You know, I could be walking along somewhere. I feel one of the things that really helps make a story begin to germinate is if you go someplace or you're doing something where your brain can just be put on autopilot. Like if you're going for a long drive, if you're not looking at your phone for an extended period of time, if you're just doing nothing and letting your mind run rampant, that's when story ideas seem to kind of appear out of nowhere. So a lot of my story ideas have always kind of had, I'm not sure where they've all come from, but they germinate from real life issues that I'm dealing with at the time, whether it's being a new father and being afraid of what would happen if I ever lost my kid. I wrote a book called The Waking, and then I've dealt with addiction in my life. My wife was addicted to drugs, and that I wrote a story called Fly, and it was a metaphor for stuff I was dealing with in my real life. So I've always felt that the best stories that a person can do are stories that are very personal to them, and those stories by consequence will be relatable to the readers out there, because most people don't realize that what they're going through, there's millions of other people out there in the world going through as well, because it's just the human condition. It's what we all go through, Like, what is the weather like in Egypt right now?
Well, we are in autumn, so it's between. Sometimes it's in the cold, and sometimes it's not so hot, but it's hot.
Like it's like 83 degrees here in Arizona right now.
Well, it's about the same here in Egypt.
Oh, okay. So it's like,
not 38 degrees. It could be like 30 and 28, maybe some days.
okay.
Something like this.
Does it snow in Egypt?
No.
It doesn't snow here in Phoenix either.
No.
Yeah. It's like we're living in the same place. It doesn't snow either place.
but I would like to see snow for some time in my life, because I have never seen it.
It's highly overrated. You ever see those movies with snow and people are making snowmen and stuff? Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. Facebook user. Have you ever seen those movies with snow in the movies, and the families are having fun? They're building snowmen and shit.
Yeah.
So snow ain't like that. Snow is not like that. You pick up. I got to see snow for the first time. I visited my friend in Ohio, and there was snow everywhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to go play with snow. And I went outside with my gloves, and you have to wear thermal pajamas under your clothes because it's so cold. Like you have to wear clothes underneath your clothes to stay warm. and you're still not warm. You're freezing cold. So I go out there with my gloves on and I pick up snow to make a snowball. And the snow melts through my gloves. And my hands are now wet and cold with this ball of icy, hot ball ice that's not even real snow. And there's no building a snowman. You know that part where they lay in the snow and they make snow angels? You would die. You would not live through that. No one makes snow angels. It's bullshit. Lies. Hollywood lies.
What are ever wrote your nightmare before? Nightmare story based on a nightmare you have seen.
Every story I write is a nightmare.
Oh,
yeah. My life is a horrible, horrible, never-ending nightmare. So, yay, therapy. Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, yeah. I think one time only I've written a book based off of a dream. I dreamed a whole entire comic book from beginning to end. And as soon as I got up and I wrote the whole thing down. And I think it's the 5th issue in the theater that I wrote for Zenoscope. And that whole story was a dream. That's the only dream I've ever written and made into a story. Other than that, I just kind of go off life.
Well, that's cool indeed. What projects are you currently working on?
I don't know if you noticed this, but I don't know what it is about this particular morning, but my eyebrows look amazing. Like you think I'm looking at you having a conversation. I'm looking at the picture of me.
Yeah, you're looking at yourself. I know.
I just keep doing this. Like if you see me do this throughout the interview, I'm doing that on purpose because I'm like, damn, look at those shits. Them shits is awesome. I didn't even know my eyebrows could do that. They move up and down. That's cool. That's impressive. Now,
what projects are you currently working on?
What project? So I'm trying to finish Widow's Web. That's actually I have the colorist finishing the next issue of that in January. Mike Crome has said he will do an exclusive cover for it next month. So I'm excited to finally get that series over and done with my co-creator, Autumn Ivy. And then I'm also doing the Crow Quill, prequel to Secret Life of Crows with Nei Rufino, my bestie. That has been a 5-year waiting game due to me being a giant alcoholic. Yeah, kids, that's a good tip for all you kids out there who want to be writers. Don't drink. Shit'll make you blow a deadline. That's why I was late to this meeting today. Wasn't there supposed to be somebody else in this panel with us?
Well, yeah, but he did say he wouldn't be able to make it today. So
was it because I was late?
No, actually, he got something to tend to, something to do.
Okay, so I just didn't want him to not be a part of it if it was because of me. But since it wasn't because of me,
it's fine.
Okay.
So, how do you manage comic teams? What? This is a double-slashed question. So, first part, how do you manage comic teams? What if one of the team is a new writer, a new penciler, inker, or a colorist, and you have never tested him in the comic field and the publishing field before? You have seen his submission, you've seen maybe a comic about his art or her art in an indie comic, but how does the composition of the team works?
God, I hate the word. It doesn't. For me personally, it doesn't happen ever.
Mm-hmm.
I it sounds bad, and hearing the words come out of my mouth, it sounds bad. But I only work with people that I'm comfortable working with, that I've worked with in the past, that I know are reliable, that I know the style and quality of their work. When I book a creative team for a project of mine, I always work with, if they're not friends, I've worked with them enough in the past to where I know exactly the product I'm going to be getting.
Mm-hmm.
So I've rarely ever hired or booked a person that I haven't had a long-standing relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
On the very few exceptions that I have, it's always been an established pro who's been.
I'm reminding you, take my pills.
Sorry, my Alexa's talking to me. She's cute. She's this little speaker that tells you shit all day.
I'm reminding you.
Do you have Alexas out there?
Pills.
No, we don't. I don't have one right here.
Okay, like this is an Alexa. Like I
Mm-hmm.
tell this thing to turn on the TV, it turns on the TV. I tell it to turn on the lights. I tell it to set alarms to find me directions. It's amazing. But the catch 22 is it's always listening. So I'm pretty sure the government knows everything I'm doing right now.
Oh.
Love you. So God, I forgot what the question. Oh yeah. So yeah, I just never it's always like when I work with someone I'd never worked with before, I'm always very trepidatious, just because when I first started making comics, the first individual I worked with kind of was flaky, wasn't really hitting deadlines. I was paying way too much. And I learned very quickly the reason that it is so hard to break into comics is it's not that no one wants to give the new writer, the new artist, the new colorist a chance.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the fact that as an editor, we know how flaky human beings can be just by nature. I've been writing for close to 2 decades now, and I still blow deadlines on a quasi-regular basis just because life gets in the way and things happen. But I've established enough of a brand and enough of a repertoire with my editors that they give me a little bit of wiggle room, and I always hopefully turn out a good product that they, readers enjoy. So yeah, it's one of those catch-22 things. Like I said, just hearing it come out of my mouth, I'm like, well, now you know why it was so hard to break into comics, Raven, because nobody wanted to give you a chance because no one had worked with you. But it's one of those things. That's why I always recommend self-publishing. Like if you go out there and you make a comic or something, then people know what you're capable of. They're like, oh, this is an example of their work. They've done this before. They've put out something on a regular basis. They've built up a name. They've gone through the trenches. Versus the kid who comes out, whose eyes are full of stars, who's never experienced what it's like working on a deadline before. You never know. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing those important tips with us, which will lead us to how to be a professional for the industry. Penciler, inker, colorist, letterer, writer, how to be an industry material, besides respecting the deadlines.
Well, this is a tricky question. This is very tricky. So, I'm gonna butcher this. But somebody said there are 3 keys to being a successful professional. It's to be really talented, to be really on time, or to be really liked.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm messing that up. I need to ask my formatter Renee Geerlings what the proper things are. But it's basically those 3. Like if you're really talented, you'll get jobs just because you're really talented and you do great work. If you're always on time and you always get things done and you're reliable, that's the word, reliable. If you're reliable, you'll get work because people know they can rely on you.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they really like you. I have hired people for all 3 of those reasons. Some people are very talented but can't hit a deadline. Some people are really reliable, but their work is, it gets the job done, but it doesn't blow you away. But you're going to get your thing done, and that's really what matters in the publishing schedule. And then there's people I like. People I like who I'm just like, let me just give him a job because I like him and he looks like he could do it, or she looks like she could do it. Let me give him a job. So when it comes to being a professional in this industry, those 3 things are key. But also the biggest, I think the biggest thing that you can do as a creative individual to establish a brand and to build your portfolio and your career is how you establish relationships. And this is one of these really strange ethereal things that you don't really get until you've experienced it. And even after you experience it, you're not really sure how you made it happen, but you start understanding that it is key. An example that was given to me when I was very young in my career was my editor, Renee Geerling. She used to be the vice president of publishing over at Top Cow, and she was the editor on The Gift for Image for me. And she had told me that something along the lines of, there's all these artists and writers that I'm huge fans of, but they're always going to be, they may one day become my peers, which now they are, but they're never going to be in your circle. What happens is as you work in this industry, you kind of find the people that you jive with the best, that like you connect with more than any other people. And these people become kind of like your pack. And as you come up in the industry, these people also come up with you and they become your circle. And if you notice, if anyone who's followed my career at all, I'm almost always working on something or another with Nia Ruffino because she's literally one of my best friends in the world. We worked on all the Wonderland series together. She's always been involved in some aspect of anything I do creatively, just because not only is she exceptionally talented and one of the best colorists and artists in the industry today, but she's also my best friend. And we became best friends because we worked together for so long. We shared common interests, and we just connected. Same with Eric Basadula. I think that's the first time I ever said his name right. Ebaz. He was a young artist at Top Cow, and I saw some of the things he was doing over at J Company for exclusives, and I'm like, this guy is the truth. He's going to be one of the greatest artists in the industry today. Most underrated, if you ask me. He can draw anything. And we all kind of came up together and we all were close friends, and same with like Mike DeBalfo and other people along that. So I think a lot of the key to being a professional in this industry is you very much on a regular basis have to cultivate the relationships you make with the people you work with, because it's those relationships that will lead to you getting continued work, and people like working with people they like. I mean, it's common sense. But it's like I said, it's a very ethereal type thing. There's no rules or like what's the right thing to say. It's like talking to a girl. You know, how do you know what to say that's going to make this girl want to drop her panties? There's no rhyme or reason, you know. You could say one thing and she's like, no, panties stay on. And you say another thing and panties come off. And you're not even sure what you said. All of a sudden, you're just like, I'm having so much fun right now. You know, it's one of those weird things. So, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing when it comes to professionalism. Never miss a deadline, especially if you're new, because people won't hire you again. You know, you can't really do anything about being super talented, but you can be reliable, and you can try to be likable. You know, not everybody's likable. Not I have an artist who isn't really social at all. He's not outgoing. I like him. I think he's freaking cool, but you know, that's not charisma is not his thing. But you know, he's very talented. He gets the job done. It's like that for everyone. If you can get the trifecta, that's the key. But really making sure that you're building upon those relationships, not being fake. You know, everyone can see through the fake, but you know, being genuine, it's key. It really is key.
Well, you did really broke the mysterious question indeed, and spilled every secret in the kitchen to this question. So, according to what you just said about the portfolio, how how to build a portfolio, and what is the first thing you look at when you go to submission?
You know, if you ask me a question and I can get through that question without saying I'm gonna pat myself on the back because I'm gonna be so happy that I didn't say So when I go through a portfolio, and this is the honest truth. Not that everything else before this has been a lie, but the honest truth is, within 5 seconds, I can tell if I want to hire you. Whether you're a colorist, whether you're a penciler, whether you're inking is really difficult to gauge for me personally. Some editors have a more keen eye in that sort of thing. I do not. But I can tell if you can render really good, if you know your balance of colors, if you know how to draw the eye across the page, if you are well versed in storytelling. Writing is a beast all its own. It's very difficult to gauge what makes a writer a good writer. Dialogue is a huge part of that. If you can write dialogue that sounds natural, that'll go a long way. I was recently on Facebook the other day, and somebody had their profile picture set to a page of dialogue. And I don't know who the person was. I can't remember their name, but I remember adding this person specifically because I think so. I think that's the I remember adding this person just because the page of dialogue was that good. So I had no idea what the story was about, but the way it was written was compelling. And I was like, I would like to read more. I think one of the keys to being a good writer is you can't assume, you can never assume. And this also goes against a lot of rules of writing. Like, you should write for yourself. You should be natural. You should let the story evolve on its own. But you really have to. You never can assume that the reader's going to keep reading.
Mm-hmm.
You have to dive into it and say, okay, I have a page to hook you in.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that page, I have to keep reeling you in, whether it's stylistically, whether it's how verbose you are, whether it's how you're crafting your descriptions. There has to be something about your style that says keep reading. And when I write a comic book, I try my hardest to get the inciting incident out of the way as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So within the first 3 to 5 pages, you know what's happening. You know what's setting off this whole story, and it's that moment that intrigues the reader to keep reading. So with writing, that's one of the things I look for. Penciling, definitely, are the figures, are the characters proportionate? The style, is the style energetic? Is it dynamic?
Mm-hmm.
Does it flow? Colors, the tones, the balance, the rendering, the shading, the lighting, all those things. But within 5 seconds, any editor can tell you, yeah, this is really good. I'll give you a job.
Mm-hmm.
Or keep working at it. That is our go-to editor thing to say to people that are not ready to be given a job. Keep working
Mm-hmm.
at it. Keep drawing. Keep coloring. You're doing good. Keep going. Looking good. Keep at it. That's our blow off. It's
Mm-hmm.
not really blow off because it's true. It's true. One of the catch-22s of this business is the more much like anything else in this life, the more you do something, the better you get.
Yeah.
If you can do something and get paid to do it while you're getting better, you get better even faster.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one of the things when you first start off in this industry, you are not getting paid to do what you do. So you're writing for yourself to get
Mm-hmm.
good. But you can't get good until you put something out there and then you see the finished product and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, me personally, I hate the words just and only and really.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time I see that in a comic book I've written, I like, I'm like, it's horrible. Because those are like the worst. Those are the worst words to use. So for me, that's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like whenever I see dialogue run on, one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me as a writer and an editor was back when I first started working for Zenoscope about a year or two into it. We had published a book, and I believe it was The Queen of Hearts,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a page missing in the story, a whole page that we had written, penciled, colored, and lettered. There's a page missing. But when you read the
And the
comic,
prince?
yeah, in the print. But when you read the comic, you don't even notice the page is missing.
Uh-huh.
The story doesn't suffer for it at all.
Mm-hmm.
In the trade paperback, the page is back.
Mm-hmm.
But in the printed version, I'm sitting there and everybody's losing their mind because we lost the page.
Mm.
But nobody noticed because it was one of those pages that really didn't even need to be there. It was just unnecessary filler. So one thing when I write, I always try to keep an eye out for what needs to be there and what's just me just trying to show off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always been a big help, and that helps. It's stuff like that that you can only get by doing, you know.
Mm.
So that's definitely a huge part of it. That's how you get better, is by doing.
Well, that's beautiful and cool. How do you manage crossovers?
Oh, uh, the easiest way. The easiest way. I've only been a part of 2 crossovers,
Mhm.
and the first one, the easiest way that I found to manage a crossover was I wrote the whole crossover. I
Well,
I wrote
that's so easy. That's indeed the easiest way.
then there's no problem. I don't have to organize anything. I wrote the Dream Eater saga for Zenoscope way back when, and the only part of the 12 issues that I didn't write was the Sinbad issue, and the Sinbad writer was Dan Wickline. So I felt he would be best to write that issue since he had written all the other Sinbad issues. So I just gave him a rough plot of where we were going with the story, and he wrote the issue, and it just all worked out perfectly. Then we went on to do a crossover called I think the Dark Age or something like that.
Mhm.
And I just wrote for that. I didn't organize or coordinate that at all. That was the editorial over at Zenoscope. They were
Mhm.
running that one on point. So that's been my only experience with crossovers.
Mhm. What's the hardest part of your job in general, and the hardest part for Raven?
The hardest part is not saying I hate that word. I really hate. I want everyone out there who's watching this to take away from this. The word is the worst freaking ism in the human language. I can't stand it. Hate it. And everybody says all the time. And it's not till you notice everyone saying all the time that you realize how annoying is. I can't stand it when I say it. Anyway, so the hardest part for me is also the most rewarding part. The hardest part for me is sitting down to write.
Hmm. Organizing your day?
When I sit down to write, you have to stop everything else you're doing. Your life has to be put on pause. You can't be halfway in, halfway out. You sit down and you write. You can't deal with anything going on in life. You can't be hungry. You have to have your food taken care of. So writing takes all your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much easier to put on Netflix or go to the gym or go take a walk or go get something to eat or go and talk to somebody else or et cetera, et cetera. But the most rewarding part is when the writing starts coming and it works, and then you're taken away by the craft. That's the most enjoyable thing in the world, because then you feel amazing. But getting there and fighting against that blank page until it comes is probably the hardest part.
Mm-hmm. Well, your tips and tricks really indeed helped me as a writer, and I'm sure it really helps anyone whoever is watching our interview, and for for recording purposes. Even when I am going to post it on YouTube, it's gonna benefit many people indeed.
I hope so.
So, are there any mistakes that you frequently see other writers making?
Um, hmm. Mistakes other writers make.
Oh. And if so, what are those mistakes and how do you think they can be avoided?
Speaking from personal experience, alcoholism is a mistake that could be avoided. That's don't do drugs. As stupid as that sounds, don't do drugs. Don't drink and don't do drugs. It fucks up your brain, and you need your brain to write. I don't know, man. That's a really good question, because I don't think I've ever. I work with very few writers in my career. The writers again, this goes back to what I was saying before. The writers I've worked with, I have a long-standing relationship with. So like Pat Shand, me and him will just get on the phone and talk story and talk the art form, and we both vibe off each other and feed off each other. So I've never really noticed a weakness in any of the writers that I've worked with in the past. I guess if I'm going off the cuff, I could say a lot of the weaknesses I first had when I was a writer was I was a little needy. When you're a writer and you have a really good idea and you instantly want to email your editor and you just want to talk their ear off, you have to be aware that when you're in a professional industry, the people you're working with, you're not the only one they're working with. They're working with probably dozens of other people. Their time is very limited. So where you want to build a relationship with them, you don't also want to be annoying. So one of the things that was a weakness for me was I had a lot of ideas and I was always sending out ideas to everyone, but I was very disorganized at the same time. So I didn't have a lot of follow through on a lot of the ideas I had. But weaknesses writing wise, I can't. The thing with writing is you know, everyone has their unique style. If one of my biggest problems being an editor is I have to be able to get out of my own way. I can't read another writer's script and say to myself, "Oh, I don't like this because this is how I would do it." I, as an editor, have to say, what can I say to this writer to help bring out the best of who this writer is, their style, and what they can be? So I don't really see a lot of weaknesses in that come across my path at all. So yeah.
Well, so one of the most weaknesses I have ever known from other writers and many ones in the industry that ask me about this: how do you build imagination? So how does Raven as a writer have tips to build an imagination?
A lot of that comes from what you put in your head. I read everything I can get my hand on. I read a whole bunch of comics. I always read comics since I was young. I try to go out there in the world and live my life and expose myself to different situations. And all of that stuff goes into your head. And from that, seeing just different things, just exposing yourself to different things out there in the world helps build your imagination. You know,
That's so right.
there's a famous writer, J. Michael Straczynski, who was mugged. He was taking a walk. I believe this is a story. He was mugged, and he was beaten, and he was laying in the gutter or wherever in the street alley where he was mugged. And he was amazed that he was asking for help and people kept walking by like they couldn't see him. And he went that from that incident, he went and wrote Midnight Nation. I think that's the story. It's either that or he saw a bum on the street and he knows people didn't notice the bum or something. It's one or the other. I haven't read it in a long time. But I think that's the thing. I think he got mugged and nobody noticed him. And he went out and wrote Midnight Nation. And part of the theme of that story is based in that reality. And that wouldn't have happened if he didn't go out and live life. That story would never have existed. So I feel a lot of building your imagination and your world building comes from your personal experiences and what you go through. Because what you go through is unique to only you. There is no other you in this world who can see things the way you see them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so cool indeed. So we're going to ask you again about the writing stuff. Are there any characters or stories you are dying to do beside the ones you have already created before?
Nope.
So you mean that you got every character in your head created?
Well, I have books that I'm working on, stories that I want to do. When I get around to doing them, they'll be done. Other than that, when I was younger, I would have loved to write the Hulk just because I find the character so relatable. But as I've grown older, there's no particular character that I'm just dying to write. I just like telling stories. I just enjoy telling stories that, you know, if they're not personal to me, that an editor thinks I might do well. I'm just a fan of the art form. There's nothing out there that I have not come up with on my own that I feel obsessed with. This would complete me to write. You know, the kid in me loved X-Men. I would have loved to write X-Men. I would have loved to write Spider-Man. I would have loved to write Hulk. I would have loved to write Batman. All these stories when I was first coming up. I have tons of spec scripts, a Daredevil spec script. All these stories I would have loved to tell. And I would, don't get me wrong, I would still love to cash the checks involved with telling these stories. But it's not a priority for me in any way whatsoever. It doesn't come to the forefront of my mind. It's much like would I like to have a movie made of one of my properties? Yeah, but it's I don't even think about it anymore because if it happens, it happens. Other than that, it's, you know, I would love David Finch to direct a movie for me, you know, but I'm not sitting there in my head thinking David Finch. By the way, David Finch, if you're watching this, you, the Waking, let's make that happen. I mean, David Fincher, not David Finch. Think of the artist, David Fincher. So yeah. There's nothing really, man.
Is it true that editors like to look at hands and feet while viewing a submission?
I don't know. I personally don't. I haven't talked to enough other editors about the craft of editing. Besides Pat Shand, he's the only other editor that me and him have actually talked about editing with. So I have no idea.
Okay. So, any advice you would like to offer to up and coming artists and writers, inkers, colorists? Just a small tip.
Tune in to Andrew Henry every week and listen to the shit he tells you. That's the best advice I can give you. And visit the pyramids. The shit's mysterious. And if you take a joint up there and smoke it at the top, that'll help you. You'll get connected with the energy and the mystery and the weed, smoke, bugs.
Yeah, and get arrested here in Egypt.
Yes, I guess they'll arrest you for smoking weed on a pyramid.
Well, so many thanks again, guys, for watching. We really did enjoy our interview with Raven Gregory, sharing with us all this tips, advice, and many secrets from the depths of the kitchen of the industry itself. We are so glad to learn about writing and how things go back and about editing, the composition between the teams, and many other things. So many thanks again, guys, for watching. Many thanks to you, Raven. Looking forward to be talking to you again.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime.
Well, goodbye.
All right, man. Take care.